Have you ever had a friend who smiled to your face but subtly hated you? Sometimes the most damaging relationships aren't romantic. They are those we call friends. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the shadow, the self, and the ego. So today we are going to talk about the mentality of toxic people who manipulate friendships through competition, gossip, and rivalry. So these toxic individuals who drag their friends down often operate through subtle manipulation, jealousy, or control. Their behavior can stem from insecurity, fear of abandonment, or simply the need for superiority. Toxic individuals who pit their friends against each other, gossip behind their backs, and create a hierarchy within a social group often do so as a means of exerting control. This behavior stems from deep dysfunction, primarily rooted in insecurity, a need for dominance, and the inability to form genuine connections. Their tactics are calculated, often masked under the guise of friendship, but their ultimate goal is to keep those around them divided and emotionally dependent on them. So, now let's talk about how they pick their targets. The manipulative toxic friend is very calculating. They don't just randomly start drama, they scan the group first. They are looking for specific traits in people, weak spots that they can exploit. Here is how they operate. Number one, the empath. This is the person who always listens, the one who is deeply caring and emotionally available. To the manipulator, this is gold. You may ask why. Because empaths are often too forgiving, they'll give the benefit of the doubt even when there is a pattern of betrayal. The manipulator knows that they can emotionally offload onto them, gain sympathy, and turn them into a loyal soldier. Number two, the insecure one. They look for someone who needs validation, who's unsure of their place in the group. This person becomes the easiest to control. The manipulator feeds them praise. For example, they'll say, "You're actually the only one in the group that has a brain," or "You're the smartest one in the group," or "You are the only one I can trust." So now the person feels special, seen, and they'll do anything to keep that feeling, even turning onto others. Number three, the newcomer. So the new person to the group is the perfect target. They don't know the full history, the context, or the group dynamic. So the manipulator gets to frame the narrative whichever way they want. They'll say things like, "Just watch out for so and so." Now the newcomer enters the group with suspicions already planted, and the manipulator is the only trusted guide. So the manipulator tells each friend that they are their real best friend. They might even say, "I only trust you, everyone else is just fill in the blank." This creates an atmosphere of exclusivity where no one talks openly and everyone is low-key competing for the manipulator's affection. So now let's get into the mindset behind their actions. Number one, power and control is one of the main motivation. At the core of this behavior is the need for power. Toxic individuals who engage in these manipulative tactics do not see friendship as a mutual supportive connection. Instead, they view relationships as a battleground where they must maintain control over others. So, by fostering division and rivalry, they prevent their friends from forming close bonds with one another, ensuring that they alone remain the central figure of quote unquote influence. So, this is a classic divide and conquer strategy. By keeping everyone at odds, they ensure that no one will unite against them or expose their manipulative nature. This makes them feel indispensable or irreplaceable. Number two, deep-seated insecurity and low self-worth. While they may project confidence and superiority, these individuals are often deeply insecure. They do not believe they are worthy of genuine love or friendship based on who they are. So, they compensate by controlling those around them. The idea of their friends forming independent relationships without them is threatening because it will expose their own lack of real value. So rather than improving themselves, they choose the easier path of tearing others down, playing on insecurities, and ensuring that their friends remain too distracted with petty rivalry to see the toxicity for what it is. Number 3, creating a false sense of superiority. One of their tactics is making certain friends believe they are better or more special than the others. This boosts the ego of those friends while simultaneously fostering resentment and jealousy in the group. By placing themselves as the judge, quote unquote, of who is worthy of admiration, they ensure that everyone is seeking their validation. This is a form of emotional currency. They use compliments, attention, favoritism, and flattery as a reward to keep others in line. So those who seek their approval are unknowingly playing into their game, constantly striving for an artificial sense of self-worth dictated by the toxic friend. Number 5, projection of their own shadow. Much of their behavior stems from unresolved inner turmoil. They project their own fears, insecurities, and weaknesses onto their friends. If they feel inadequate, they make others feel inadequate. If they fear rejection, they create an environment where others feel constantly at risk of being excluded. So rather than confronting their own shadow, which is the part of themselves that they suppress, they externalize it onto their social circle, making others suffer through the same emotional instability they refuse to face. So now let's talk about the effect that this can have on the friend group. The impact of such manipulative behavior on a friend group can be deeply damaging. Over time, the toxicity festers, creating an environment of distress, emotional exhaustion, and eventually this will break down the relationships. Some of the major consequences are: number 1, erosion of trust. Over time, the toxicity festers, and this creates an environment of mistrust, emotional exhaustion, and eventually the friendships will start to break down. So let's talk about some of the major consequences this can have on the friend group. Number 1, erosion of trust. When a toxic individual is constantly pitting people against each other, trust is the first casualty. Friends begin questioning each other's motives, wondering who's gossiping about who, and whether they are being manipulated. Instead of genuine connections, interactions become strained and filled with suspicion. Number 2, unhealthy competition and insecurity. So, the forced competition among friends leads to resentment and insecurity. Those who feel less favored might begin questioning their worth, developing a feeling of insecurity, while those who are praised might develop a false sense of superiority. Instead of uplifting each other, the group becomes focused on gaining approval from the manipulator. Number 3, mental and emotional exhaustion. Being in a social environment where one has to constantly prove themselves, navigate gossip, and fend off rivalry is emotionally draining. Friendship should be a source of comfort and support, but under the influence of a toxic person, they become a source of stress and anxiety. Number 4, slow disintegration of the group. Over time, many will begin to recognize the toxicity and distance themselves, but not before deep emotional damage has been done. Some friendship will be permanently severed, and the emotional wounds left behind may take years to heal. Meanwhile, the manipulator will move on to a new group, repeating the cycle. Number 5, loss of individual identity. So people who remain in such environment for too long often lose sight of who they are. They become so accustomed to seeking validation from the manipulative friend that they forget their own self-worth. This can lead to a long-term issue with confidence, self-esteem, and the ability to form healthy relationships in the future. So now let's explore how to break free and how to handle this type of toxicity. If you find yourself in a group where one person is fostering division, spreading gossip, and making friends compete, it's important to recognize the signs and take action. So here is how. So number 1, acknowledge the manipulation. The first step is seeing the pattern for what it is. If you notice someone always playing favorites, spreading rumors, or creating unnecessary conflict, recognize that this behavior is intentional. Number 2, limit emotional dependency. So avoid seeking validation from the toxic individual. Their approval is not genuine and is only a tool for control. Number 3, strengthen independent friendship. Form direct and honest relationships with others in the group without involving the manipulator. The stronger the personal connections, the less power they'll have over the group dynamic. Number 4, set boundaries. If the toxic person tries to gossip or create drama, shut it down. Let them know you don't participate in negativity. Number 5, consider distancing yourself. If the toxicity persists and begins affecting your well-being, walking away may be the best option. So, protecting your mental and emotional health is more important than maintaining a relationship with someone who thrives on control and conflict. So now here are my final thoughts. Toxic individuals who manipulate friendship through competition, gossip, and rivalry are often deeply insecure and lack real self-worth. Their need for power, validation, and control stems from unresolved personal issues they project onto those around them. While their tactics can be subtle and emotionally damaging, awareness is the key to breaking free. Healthy friendships are built on trust, support, and genuine connections. Anything that thrives on division and emotional manipulation is not true friendship. Recognizing this dynamic and choosing to surround yourself with people who uplift rather than tear down is essential for long-term emotional well-being. So, have you ever found yourself in a situation like this with a toxic friend before? If you have, please let me know how you handled it, because silence is how the manipulator stays in power, but truth is how you get your power back. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.